shit. Here we go again.
Hello everyone. Did you ever have a day where you just wished everyone would just forget about you? Today we're talking about a character that lives like that every day. He's been a member of the X-Men longer than you probably think, and his powers aren't super flashy, but boy can they be both powerful and confusing. And of course we're talking about Forget-Me-Not. Forget-Me-Not's creators were Mike Carey, Simon Spurrier, and his first appearance was X-Men Legacy number 300 of March 2014. Now Forget-Me-Not, or otherwise known as Xabi, although his real name is unknown, was a member of the X-Men for over 6 years, likely joining them before M-Day. Due to how his powers work, he was unnoticed by his peers at school and was always absent from all official school rosters. Professor X had to place a psychic reminder in his own mind to force him to remember Forget-Me-Not's own existence once an hour. Otherwise, even he would forget him. Now, although his first appearance was in X-Men Legacy number 300, Forget-Me-Not was retconned into past X-Men activities, including battling the Brood, relocating to Utopia, battling during the Age of X, and memorializing Professor X. He was a soldier during the Age of X and saved the X-Men countless times, acting as some kind of deus ex machina for them against the Brood or even Super Sentinels, for example. When Professor X was murdered, Forget-Me-Not memorialized him. Professor X was his only permanent connection with others that he had, so he became severely depressed over the loss. He now wanted to remove his powers, so he looked for Omega and Mimic. Forget-Me-Not wanted Omega to drain his powers, but didn't go forward with it when he realized that he could still do some good in the world. Forget-Me-Not returned to the Jean Grey School for Higher Learning and occasionally patrolled the grounds. Eventually, he encounters a disfigured girl who wanted to be part of the outcast group of the X-Men. Forget-Me-Not managed to help her evade the mansion's defenses by taking her place in a trap and was developing his own story, telling her all about it. The girl eventually left and Forget-Me-Not stood trapped, stating that even those defenses would eventually forget about him. Now eventually he is indeed released, but was left with a bald and scarred back of the head, courtesy of the defense system. Now at one point he is sort of targeted by X-Force, as he was detected by a series of clues that were gathered by Dr. Nemesis. Now mostly it was Psylocke's memory absence and various disruption of cameras that caused him to be caught. They were using data on his use of supplies and toilet paper and was then teleported to the X-Force's headquarters. As Nemesis recorded himself explaining the situation to the team and left a note to rerun the recording over each time they went coffee break, X-Force chased Forget-Me-Not in the helicarrier at least a decade of times, not really knowing that Phantomex was perfectly able to remember him and track him down all along. Now during this time frame, Forget-Me-Not witnessed some erotic interaction between Phantomex and Mimi, Marrow's insanity, X-Force's lack of moral fiber, Cable and Psylocke's weird sexual relations, and even met the maintenance bots of the ship who were able to remember him somehow. Eventually managing to enter dialogue with Nemesis while he was under the effects of his hyper coffee, he accepted to be used in their plot, becoming visible by suppressing his powers and allowing one of the yellow eye drones to target him, then remove the power suppressor and track the drone back home. Unfortunately, the bug stood there, able to perceive him, and Phantomex showed up and shot him to make the bug leave. With Forget-Me-Not apparently dead, both Yellow Eye members and Nemesis forget about him and believe the mission was a complete success. His body was then just simply taken away by the maintenance bots. Now later, while Cable and Morrow interrogate Volga, Hope learns that the last part of Mimi's conscious was in control of the maintenance bots aboard X-Force's base, and the revelation that Mimi saved Forget-Me-Not's life after Phantomex shot him. When X-Force returned from one of their missions to stop the now evil Phantomex's raids on super agencies, once he introduced himself to the team, he was quickly assaulted by Morrow. He was then freed by Cable, however, once he said he had instructions for Hope. He then had Morrow touch the comatose Hope, who then mimicked her healing powers, which then allowed her to move her body to a computer. She then showed them all of Cable's manipulations in baiting Phantomex into attacking other agencies and super spies. Even though he was still forgotten, Forget-Me-Not approached Psylocke and threw her into Hope, who then automatically mimicked her telepathy and broadcasted her memories and feelings to X-Force, and even the team's position to Phantomex. As Forget-Me-Not explained it all to Cable and stated it was all Hope's plan that was put into motion, the X-Force members were losing and starting to give up. But Forget-Me-Not, already forgotten again, asked them to stand against Phantomex and weaken him, as part of Hope's plan. Using the diversion provided by Domino, Psylocke, and Morrow, Forget-Me-Not snuck behind Phantomex and teleport tagged him into the laboratory, had Hope's hand touching Phantomex, which was specifically his butt, in order to absorb his powers, and ordered Nemesis to body slide the enemy out, next to the sun. Nemesis and Forget-Me-Not witness his approach of Earth, as well as Hope's awakening. While both Nemesis and Hope, who had mimicked Nemesis's powers, were working on a cure for Cable and Phantomex, Forget-Me-Not stood by their sides, encouraging them. As time was lacking, he proposed to Hope, who seemingly agreed, to release an army of Cable's clones on Phantomex. Now later he shows up in the mutant nation of Krakoa, where he joined Nightcrawler's team, the Legionaries. The problem was, only Kurt and Cortez seemed to know who he really was. At one point, however, Forge was actually working on a device that could fix this. He later, sadly, had to sacrifice himself to kill Warlock, which saved Krakoa from Nimrod. Sadly, his teammates completely forget about his valiant sacrifice, and it's never really explained if he's added to the resurrection queue afterwards. Forget-Me-Not was a mutant who is in a state of constant existential superposition, both real and unreal. He's literally written out of the story. This is automatic, and thus he cannot control it or stop it. His powers are on 24/7, 365. Besides this, his abilities also include imperceptibility. Forget-Me-Not is incapable of being perceived or remembered by virtually all individuals. When he isn't within direct view of an individual, his presence, existence, and any and all memories of him completely disappear. Someone would literally have to stare at him until they killed him, otherwise they would forget everything about him if they even so much as blinked, and then he would have the upper hand in the fight. He has telepathic imperceptibility. Although Psylocke was able to detect psychic traces of him, later on she was unable to find it again, even though Forget-Me-Not was only a couple feet away from her. His undetectability actually interferes with individuals' aim and targeting and even the telemetry of technical and mechanical devices. As an example, Nemesis, Yellow Eye members, and their drones completely forgot about him, and because of that, he escaped. He once even stole Cable's gun, and he never found out about it. After he becomes imperceptible, he leaves people with absences of memory. Now, because of this leftover mental, quote, evidence, Psylocke was eventually able to perceive his existence. Now, as he still physically exists, so do all of his actions, which can eventually be perceived, like when he uses supplies or when he uses toilet paper. So unless it's the sock trolls that keep taking my left socks and hiding them, people eventually start to logically conclude that he could possibly exist. Technology can sometimes pierce the veil of his powers, as a detector trap was able to catch him. However, this is the exception and not the rule, as most technology does, quote, forget him as well. Even after death, Phantomex's maintenance bots kept a memory and perception of him. His powers also leave some noticeable distortions on video, which also could give away his existence. Even some S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier maintenance bots, who stated themselves to be invisible too, were able to remember and interact with him. In our opinion, this has got to be one of the more cleverly created characters that Marvel has made over the last 10 years. What an amazing power, but with such a monkey's paw of a catch. Some characters cannot see their loved ones with the use of their own eyes. Some mutants can't even touch another human without absorbing all of their life essence. But for Forget-Me-Not, he wants nothing more than to simply be remembered. Anyway, you guys have a wonderful night, an awesome morning, an excellent evening, whichever. Please like, share, and subscribe. We really do appreciate that. Also, leave a comment down below. Let us know what you think of this video, as well as maybe write down a character that you would like to talk about, and we'll see if we can't make it happen. As always, Excelsior.
Hello, monkeys!